And we're back here on the Locked On Crossover Edition. It's Ducks and Hoosiers. We meet again in the Big Ten tournament. And you and I both agree there's a lot at stake for this game in terms of who wins, who loses, what it means for the NCAA tournament. But this was an exciting game that came down to the wire just a few days ago, it seems like, when Indiana came out to Eugene for the very first time. And you hear people talk about matchups, Spencer, all the time, but it really did come down to that in this game, whether it be the big men inside or the guards on the outside knocking down shots. It has to be for Indiana, I think, Umar Ballo and Malik Reneau, who played fine but did not play great. Malik Reneau was questionable to make that road trip. He was there, played a good game against Washington. Oregon was not so great. But Indiana, it's no secret, man. Half our points in the first matchup came from inside the paint. We have to do that again. And if we can do that, hey, we lost the rebounding battle. We can't do that against Oregon. I'm sorry, we can't. If we can change some of those things, Indiana's going to have a good chance. But my guess is Oregon's going to have a game plan for that.
Yeah, and the adjustments between Dane Altman and Mike Woodson are one of the fascinating elements because, as we mentioned earlier, they met so recently, and that was such a tightly contested game. And I think that it is something you can choose. Of course, you can choose to do anything, but you can choose to be optimistic if you're an Indiana fan, which is, hey, this was a tight back and forth game really all throughout, and that was on Oregon Senior Day in Eugene.
Yep.
Now you go to a neutral site. There's not going to be a major crowd advantage, and if anything, it'll be in favor of Indiana, right?
Indianapolis, baby.
Yeah. So I think that if the Hoosier fans show up, this may feel a bit like a road game, and Oregon just went on the road in a tough crowd against a bad, dead last Washington team and struggled to win. They were the better team for long stretches in that game, but then they just kind of went quiet and the offense disappeared when Nate Biddle wasn't going absolutely bonkers up in Seattle. But, you mentioned earlier the Jackson Shellstad shot, and by the way, I have the text to Jacob to prove it that I did indeed think that shot was going in once he put it up, even though it was, shot from up in Portland. But I think that for Oregon in this spot, they've got to be able, if they're going to hit, 73, 75 points, they've got to be able to get one of their guards going, whether that's TJ Bamba driving to the basket or Jackson Shellstad hitting shots. Keyshawn Barthelemy is always an Energizer Bunny, big shot sort of guy. I mean, he really is big shot Barthelemy. Like, he had, a three-pointer against Washington to end a 5-minute field goal drought, which is Oregon's specialty at times on offense. But, when Shellstad isn't there, it really does need to be Bamba. Barthelemy can give you that scoring in spurts. I don't know if he can sustain it because he's really, really small, but he is a huge part of what Oregon does offensively. But either Bamba's got to get going to the rim or Shellstad has to be able to find his outside shot again. In the first matchup, he was just 2 of 7 from 3, but that's better than what he did on Sunday when he didn't knock down a triple. So, if Oregon's able to have that presence on the outside consistently, not, oh, wow, Bamba had 8 points in 5 minutes and then 2 points the rest of the game. No, that's not what Oregon needs here. You and I talked ahead of the first matchup about the scoring inside and how important that was, and it's a big part of what Indiana did, but it was a pretty solid part of what Oregon did too. They went just 6 of 25 from beyond the arc, the Ducks did in the first matchup, and found a way to put up 73 points and win the game. They did that by getting to the free throw line, but that's because they attacked. They got inside. They forced the issue, put the onus on officials, and Mike Woodson had his own thoughts about the officiating in that game, which definitely...
All we can hope is the same crew as in Indy. All we can hope.
I think based on the free throw disparity, that's what Oregon would certainly be hoping for. But, it turns out, when Oregon went to the Big Ten, a question I frequently got on the show, Jacob, was, hey, now that we're in the Big Ten, should Oregon expect to have better officiating, than the Pac-12? And look, the Pac-12 set the bar so low. I mean, so low.
R.I.P.
I know. R.I.P. Forever and always. Sweet Prince. But they set the bar low. But I think what we found out this year wasn't just a Pac-12 thing.
It's everywhere.
It's just a national problem. Yeah. You can find teams and coaches in any conference. Yeah. I challenge you to go and run an anonymous poll of basketball or football coaches who would say overall the officiating in this league is good. SEC, Big Ten, wherever. I don't think you would hit a majority in any league in the country, Jacob. I really don't.
You wouldn't.
And unfortunately, that's a discussion point when you're looking at the matchup like you and I are. Because, yeah, that is a big gap. Now, Indiana shot 25 threes, but Oregon shot 25 threes. Indiana was going inside just as much as Oregon was. Yeah, there were plenty of missed calls that went both ways. I did think Oregon got the benefit of the doubt there, kind of being on their home floor. So I wonder if that flips. 19 of 21 versus 3 of 7. That was the first game. And if that continues again, I mean, good luck to whichever team is on the 3 of 7 side of things at the charity stripe.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be somewhat even. And I'm not saying it has to be the exact same in every single game. That's impossible. But what you don't want to see also is it be called, and this frustrates me so bad nowadays in college basketball. And it seems like this is the sport it happens the most, where they officiate the first 20 minutes one way, and then it's like they get the phone call, they have the discussion, whatever the case, they read social media, and they completely flip how they officiate the second half. And it's like, no, because the coaches are going in making adjustments based off how you called the first half, and then you completely change it. And look, we could sit here and debate about officiating all we want to, but it still does come down to who's going to execute their game plan and who's going to make shots. And what's exciting for Indiana is in the game against Oregon, we made 9 threes. That doesn't really happen for us very often. If you haven't noticed, we're a terrible three-point shooting team. We always have been under Mike Woodson. But Trey Galloway was the leading scorer the first time around, and he just had one of his best games of this season in our finale against Ohio State this past weekend. They're calling it Trey Galloway Day, as he's been here for 18 years. And so Indiana is coming in feeling pretty good about ourselves. The question is, can you score other than the 3-ball? You hit 9 threes, but only scored 64 points on the road. Not going to get it done. But on a neutral site against what I would say is a streaky 3-point shooting team from Oregon, they're dangerous, but they're not always on. We rely on the paint points and the paint touches, and then we get our guards involved. And for the Indiana Hoosiers, man, if we don't turn the ball over and we just get down low and get to the low block, whether it's Ballo, whether it's Renew, whether they play together or just play by themselves, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, because it's Mike Woodson and he wakes up and decides what he wants to do that day. But the Hoosiers have the advantage inside. We can't get out rebounded, we can't get out hustled, and we can't get out manned. If we do those things correctly, I think we have a really good chance to win this game. And like we talked about a second ago, improve our NCAA tournament seeding, because we do want to try and make a run in Mike Woodson's last season. And I know Oregon believes they can make a pretty good run too.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon can beat anybody in this tournament. They might be able to lose to anybody in this tournament as well.
That's fair.
But it's kind of one of the things that makes it interesting. By the way, the sun is setting over here. I don't know why I suddenly look like a cherry tomato for those watching on YouTube, but like I look like I'm getting...
You're real flustered about this game.
Yeah,
like, yeah, we're on him. Yes, he's worried. He's scared.
I am literally taken aback by what I am looking at on camera here. Like, this is so and I promise it is just, I am not that nervous about this game because Oregon season isn't on the line just yet. But I want to go back to the matchup that we highlighted in the first meeting, and that's Nate Biddle and Umar Ballo. Yep. Ballo had a stretch in the second half where he couldn't be kept off the offensive glass. I think he had 3 offensive rebounds on 1 possession, and he had 4 for the game. And he didn't have a ton of shots, but he was 5 of 7 from the floor going up against Biddle, who had a good game at the defensive end and passing the ball. He was just 3 of 10 from the field. Ballo really frustrated him a bit. And coming off a career-high 36-point Sunday against Washington, I'm interested to see how that matchup plays out because Ballo is thicker than Nate Biddle, but Biddle is far more skilled than Ballo is and has a more complete, well-rounded offensive game. So I once again see that matchup as the most pivotal one. Whoever ends up guarding Jackson Shelstad, that's important too. But I think those 2 guys are the premier players, and Biddle did enough. He was 8 of 8 at the foul line in the first matchup, and he did a great job defensively with 4 blocks, and he had a season-high 6 assists as well. But is he able to be a more efficient scoring version of himself? When he is, I think that is when Oregon is really at their best.
Indiana in Oregon, the first game on Thursday. It's the 9 and the 8 seed in the Big Ten tournament. The winner gets the Big Ten champ, the Michigan State Spartans. He is Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Ducks. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers.